welcome everyone. I'm Leslie Yankin. I'm an instructional technology consultant at the department. I am introducing myself right now because I'm going to be turning off my video to lessen the demand on my internet connection. But I just wanted to greet you all face to face before I did that. So now I'm going to turn off my video. Okay. So welcome everyone to our session using real-world examples to develop high-quality instructional materials. I see it pop back on. Okay. We are very excited for this session and excited to see you all here. Today, we're going to be sharing instructional materials and practices that you can take back to your classrooms and use with your students. We're going to be doing this through examining 2 examples of technology innovations, and we're going to be looking at these examples through the lenses of 2 questions that can engage your students in really meaty discussions about content. They're questions that you can use to engage your students in applying and reflecting on technology and computer science content. And they're questions that can bring together content from across disciplines. And you can use these same questions to examine a number of different real-world situations involving technology. So they're applicable to a lot of learning experiences that you can develop with your students. We're going to provide links to all of these materials at the end of the session. So you will have links to everything and access to everything. Let me just briefly introduce our other presenters today. We have John Wiseman here, who is a computer science program specialist at the department. We have Janelle Horton, who's a computer science and technology consultant also at the department. And we have Rebecca Michael, who is the Ohio Cyber Range Director. So I'm very excited to have all of our presenters here together. A word about the session. We are recording this session. And as I said, the slides, recordings, and resources will all be available on the department's Building Bridges webpage. And at the end of the session, we'll post a link to that in the chat. But please allow a week or 2 for the materials to be posted. Also, the materials are going to be available on the Info Ohio's open space. And John's going to say a bit more about that later. This will be an active session, and at several points, we'll be discussing questions and topics. So during the discussions, please do participate, and you can do that by raising your hand and unmuting your mic, or by using the chat. Otherwise, please use the chat to share resources and ask questions, and we're going to be monitoring the chat. Closed captioning is available for whoever needs that. And the way you get to it is you click on the 3 dots that are in the upper right of your screen, and then you'll click on an option for live captioning. At the end of the session, we're going to be posting an exit survey for you so you can provide us feedback. And also, you can use that same survey to submit for contact hours. So let's get started. We always like to start our sessions by looking at Ohio's strategic plan and the connections between our work and the strategic plan. Each Child, Our Future is Ohio's shared plan for ensuring that each student is challenged, prepared, and empowered for his or her future by way of an excellent pre-K through grade 12 education. And this plan really guides our work at the department and promotes high-quality educational practices across the state. There's many ways that our session today and our work aligns to this plan. I'm just going to look at the 4 learning domains to point out a couple key ways that the work in computer science and technology and our work today supports the plan. So first of all, thinking about the focus on technology. If you look at the learning domain, foundational knowledge and skills, you'll see that technology is identified as providing foundational knowledge and skills. Also, we have a huge focus on problem solving and design thinking, and these are important components of the leadership and reasoning domain. So these are just some of the ways that our work today connects with our strategic plan, Ohio strategic plan. So now just a quick overview of what we'll be doing. So as I said, we're going to be looking at 2 technology examples together and working with those. And the 2 examples involve the Ohio Cyber Range and precision agriculture. And we're going to be examining those through the lenses of engineering design and ethics. And we're going to be connecting this work to the technology and computer science standards so you can see how they align with our standards and connect to that content. And we're also going to be at the end considering the criteria that we use to evaluate instructional practices and materials. So together, we're going to be working through 2 examples of real world situations that, involving technological development. As I said, the Ohio Cyber Range and precision agriculture. And we're going to be considering each of the examples through these 2 framing questions. The first involves engineering design. How are technological solutions determined by the problems they are attempting to solve? So developers, when they design a solution, they're addressing an identified problem or human want or need. So how does that particular problem they've identified, its criteria, its constraints, how does it limit or determine the type of solution that can result? In other words, the resulting solution. The second question involves ethics. What ethical issues arise with the development of new technologies? And as we go through each example, you'll be able to view the learning experience from both the perspectives of the teacher and the student. So you'll put on both of those hats. So now we'll move on to our first example, and John Wiseman is going to take us through that example. So John, take it away.
All right, thank you, Leslie. Want to thank everybody for coming today. And before we get started, I would like to point out that you will be able to access these materials, as Leslie pointed out, including the PowerPoint that you're seeing here, links to the videos we're going to share, and the student worksheet we created to help work through this. And you'll be able to download this either from the Building Bridges landing page through the Department of Education website or through the Ohio Cyber Club Toolkit. And we will make all those links available to you. Also, remember, this project is just an example of types of lessons and activities that can integrate different content areas for use in your classroom. This isn't necessarily a 100% completed, but we wanted to put some examples together and really just talk through some of these items. I do want to share with you really quickly that Leslie is putting a link in the chat to this our Info Ohio open space site, and I'm going to pull it up and just show you really quickly. So this is the little site that we put together to be able to keep all these materials together. And again, we will make sure that you have these links, but what you're going to see here is down here are the videos that we're going to use during today's presentation. Now, these are longer versions of the videos. The ones you're going to see this morning are a little bit shorter just because we didn't want to take all of our time watching videos, but there is some good content in here. And then you'll see also below here is where you can download either a PDF or PowerPoint slides of the presentation and the student worksheet. There's also a link up here. So this is the open space site as part of the Cyber Club Toolkit. And we'll do other sessions on that down the road, but this is another set of resources that we're working with. So let me get rid of that. As we run through the presentation, keep a couple things in mind. The worksheet, if you go into that page that Leslie is linked to and go ahead and click on that worksheet, you can go through that as we work through this presentation this morning. We will be asking you questions, and I really expect people to pipe up and participate in this because I don't want to just sit here and hear crickets. It's my biggest fear today. I think I shared with the team. So also, as we do this, put yourself in the place of your students and think about the questions as you listen to the video and the notes. And also today, again, as I mentioned, we will be playing a shorter version of some of these videos just for the sake of time. This first video introduces the Ohio Cyber Range Institute and specifically the Ohio Cyber Range tool. And the Cyber Range is a resource available to all Ohio teachers and students that houses resources. You can build and deploy virtual networks. And these are designed around cybersecurity and related content, and it only takes a browser to access these. So I know a lot of times your tech folks are worried the minute you say cybersecurity on their network. So these are browser based, and Becca Michaels, or Becca, is here with us today. But we did go ahead and interview her a little bit last week, and we're going to play a short part of that video right now. So I'll go ahead and play that.
The Institute is just administrative support for the regional programming centers who are doing all of the cybersecurity education, workforce, and economic development activities. Is designed to work as a virtual lab for any cybersecurity education program. We have these blueprints that can be used by any institution that are pre-configured that go along with educational materials that we also have in our cybersecurity library. The OCRI's mission is a lofty one. It's to improve cybersecurity for the citizens of Ohio. And in order to do that, we took a collaborative approach and decided to tackle all areas of cybersecurity education, workforce, and economic development.
Oh, sorry about that.
There are a lot of issues in gaining access to cybersecurity education, and there's a lot of issues in gaining access to a safe environment to practice your cybersecurity skills. And so that meant that you had to go to a physical location that had the lab set up and configured, had the networking equipment available, which becomes really expensive for whoever is hosting that lab. And also, there's not that many people who were able to instruct in those labs. So something that the Cyber Range offers is a virtual view of that. It's configured and managed by faculty members who are remote, so we can be anywhere. So we have access to all of the really smart people in the state who can manage the educational materials, but also the lab environment. So another issue with teaching cybersecurity skills is, we are teaching not only how to defend a network, how to harden a system, but also we have to teach to think like an adversary. We have to teach, what people are trying to do to gain access to a system and to circumvent some of the normal security procedures. And in order to practice those skills, when you don't have malintent, you need some kind of network, you need some kind of system to try to break into to see if you have, in fact, hardened that system. And you don't want to do that on public networks because that's, that at that point, you're becoming the adversary. Everyone who is an educator in the state of Ohio is welcome to go to our website, theohiocyberrange.org, and you will see a tab at the top that says Get Involved. Simply click on that and then request access to the range. What you will receive once you request access is you'll receive an invitation to a Teams channel that has all of the educators who have requested access in the state. Currently, we have about 350 people who are all in a Teams environment who can communicate with each other directly and talk about the materials, the classes, ask questions about cybersecurity education and workforce development. And then you also gain access to all of the materials, the education modules that have been written by faculty and teachers across the state, have been validated by the OCRI, and have been published for reuse. These are all free to use for anyone in the state.
Okay. Again, that is a short version of the video. There is a very long, not very long, but a longer version with a lot of great information available through that link. So now it's time for audience participation. So feel free to unmute and just call it out or type in the chat. The first thing we want to talk about and have you answer is, what are the problems the Ohio Cyber Range addresses? Miss Laney says accessibility of cybersecurity classes for the workplace. Absolutely, that's a fantastic one. Not only is it available for your students in the high school and college, but you're right, it is available for workforce. Angela says a safe environment. Absolutely, a safe environment that is captured so that traffic is not leaving that virtual network to get outside. So those are two fantastic ones, and definitely major bonuses and things that the cyber range does allow. So the next thing we're going to do is Janelle's going to take us through some of the standards that we saw alignment with from the Ohio Learning Standards. Janelle.
Good morning, everyone. So here are some key connections to standards that we see, but you may see others as you look through these issues. We focused on the 6 through 8 grade band in technology learning standards and the grade 6 standards for computer science. We'll go through these briefly here. However, the slides will be available to you so you can review these connections later. So for technology standards, we looked at the design and technology strand. For DT1C, users of the cyber range can look at the design of a problem and see the criteria, which are the requirements for the design to be successful, and the constraints, which are the limitations on the design, such as materials, time, or budget, to determine how to solve it. For DT3B, users can explain ways that invention and innovation within one field, such as cybersecurity concerns, can transfer into other fields of technology, such as the Cyber Range Sandbox, to provide a safe place for you to practice those skills. For the computer science standards, we saw connections from the computing systems strand. For D6A, users of the range will be able to take a particular device and know what it can and cannot do, and how everything works together to form the computing system. And that's a skill they'll learn in the cyber range to address security issues. For T6A, in the range, users will use systematic processes to identify cybersecurity concerns. Students will find possible solutions, test those solutions, and determine which solution is the best to solve the problem. Also, we found connections to the impacts of computing strand as we look at standards CU6A. The sandbox has an impact for cybersecurity professionals by giving them a way to safely and legally practice and develop the skills needed to address cybersecurity concerns. John, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. We're going to take a look at another question. And again, the questions you're seeing are on that worksheet. So what technology does the range use to solve these problems? So you can go ahead and drop in the chat or unmute and answer. HTTP, you're absolutely right. That the range does use a browser to be able to do that. That's great. Great catch. Web browser, we're seeing web browser. You know, a couple other technologies that are used. Oh, Jonathan, got it. Virtual machines. So we're using this virtual machine technology to do that. So again, it's innovative. It's a great way to get your students, access to things that they typically couldn't or shouldn't do live in the classroom. So Janelle's going to talk about some of the standards that we found for this question.
So considering what we just discussed and what you guys have typed into the chat there, we have some other standards. So for technology standards, this question connects to the design and technology strand again. For DT1A, the technology used in the range to solve problems, that sandbox, provides a more efficient way to learn the skills needed to solve those problems rather than going an unsafe or illegal route to learn those skills. For DT1D, the sandbox allows for optimization or testing a design solution by allowing users to collect data to evaluate how well the solution meets design requirements as they work in the sandbox. For DT3D, the cyber range modules and the work in the sandbox allow users to see how changes in one part of a system can impact other parts of that system. And for DT3E, the cyber range modules and the work in the sandbox also allow the users to deconstruct a system, such as a network, into its component parts and see how they're interrelated. Students also apply systems thinking to solve cybersecurity issues. For the computer science standards, this question connects to the impacts of computing strands. So again, we see CU6A. This standard also applies for this question. As we look at the technology the range uses in the sandbox has a great impact on the people that defend networks from security concerns because they're learning those skills to defend safely and legally. And this question also connects to the networking topic from the networks and internet strand. For N6A, the components in the range, such as the virtual machines, the cloud servers, networks, they're all used to address the problems that the cyber range will address.
Janelle? We will now take a look at one more question around the Ohio Cyber Range Institute. And this question is probably one of the most important and deepest questions, is what types of ethical concerns arise through the use of this technology? So go ahead and drop into the chat what you think about this particular question. Give you just a moment to do that. This is where I should have the Jeopardy music playing, right? Jonathan, teaching students skills that they could use for illegal purposes. You're absolutely right. And it's funny, during this, our entire, as we set this presentation up, we kept thinking back to Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, and we find out it's really Winston Churchill. With great power comes great responsibility. So those are some things that we have to keep in mind as students dive into this, and as teachers, that we make sure that they understand the consequences of their action. And it's great. Ms. Laney actually just said that too. So making sure students know what they learn should be used for good. And again, it's that idea of letting them know what it's for and getting them on the side of good. And yeah, understanding consequences. Fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and have Janelle. She's going to talk. Yes.
Also, I see that Jerry Davis has a hand raised.
Oh, go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, John, I teach digital tools with 7th graders, and one of the things that we talk about is how hospitals and how things that are connected very directly to their lives can be hacked, and otherwise they think of these things as abstract consequences. And I try to impress upon them the ethics of this is that real people will be harmed in real ways, even though this seems like an abstract thing. The importance of guarding these resources is tantamount.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's neat too. We have another comment that says students can use these skills to interrupt school assemblies or classrooms. Yeah, that would not be good. But you're right. I mean, those are the kind of things, if you think back to when you were, when I was in, junior high or high school, boy, you think that, well, what's the big deal? If we interrupt a consequence, the big deal is that these are felonious, felonies, and it can get you really seriously in a lot of trouble and actually locked up. This lady says, we had the problem when I was in high school. So yeah. So, I mean, when I was in high school, we were still chipping on tablets, but understandable. Okay, so Janelle's going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about the standards that we saw in this question.
Okay, so let's dive into our technology learning standards. This question connects to topics from the society and technology strand. So users of the cyber range, ST1A, users of the cyber range will be able to exhibit ethical, legal, and responsible behavior in the confines of that sandbox to practice and develop those cybersecurity skills. And for ST1C, users of the cyber range will also be able to demonstrate ethical considerations and review legal requirements when using and creating digital technologies in the sandbox. For the computer science standards, it connects to the safety, law, and ethics topic and the impacts of computing strand. So for SLE 6B, students will become familiar with some of the attempts made by third parties to try to misuse private information, and they'll discover the impact of those attempts. And for SLE 6E, by using the sandbox at the cyber range, users will be able to recognize the difference between appropriate and inappropriate behavior, content on the internet, and identify what is unethical and illegal online behavior. There are other technology standards and computer science standards that we felt would connect with the usage of the cyber range. You may also see other standards that may connect with usage of the cyber range. So we're showing you these briefly, but they will be available for you to review in the session material.
Thanks, Janelle and John. Now we're ready to move on to our second example. And again, we're going to be examining this example through those same lenses, the engineering design lens, and ethics. So now we're going to look at an example involving precision agriculture, and that will be explained to you shortly if you're not familiar with that term. And as you look at this example, again, through these same lenses, think about how different considerations come to light through using this different example of technological development. And also think about how different content can be integrated in with this example around precision agriculture. And John now is going to take us through the second example. So John, take it away.
Thanks, Leslie. Okay, so as before, and let me click the next slide. So as before, we will use the worksheet to examine some of the questions around precision agriculture technology. So again, this worksheet can be used to engage students in active listening. You can put yourself today in the place of your students and really think about the questions as you listen to the videos and jot down some answers if you feel like you'd like to. So we're now going to play two short videos regarding precision agriculture. The first is a quick introduction of the precision agriculture, and the second is a shortened version of the video that we found online that advancement can have different outcomes for different individuals. We're going to go ahead and play the first video and
with precision agriculture, farmers need to know precisely what inputs are needed where, in what amount, and when. This requires collecting a lot of information from different sources and in different parts of the field on things like soil nutrients, the presence of pests and weeds, the level of greenness of the plants, inputs applied, and the weather forecast. Once collected, this information needs to be analyzed to produce agronomic recommendations. For instance, given the developmental stage of a plant, its level of greenness may reveal its nutritional needs. This information, combined with the characteristics of the soil where the plant is located and a forecast of the weather, can be used to determine how much of a certain fertilizer should be applied to that plant the next day. Delivering agronomic recommendations on time to farmers and ensuring they are able to apply these recommendations is key. Farmers need to have all the necessary inputs at hand and be able to translate the recommendations into actions in the field. To solve this problem, big farmers use sophisticated machinery that collects georeferenced information on soil characteristics, yields, and greenness of the plants. These machines are often connected to the internet and send the information automatically to ag big data firms that analyze the information and send agronomic instructions back to the machines, which are able to automatically apply them in the field. For instance, using robotic devices attached to GPS-guided tractors. However, solutions like these may be economically infeasible for medium and small-scale farmers. These farmers lack the scale to afford that sophisticated machinery, lack the knowledge to operate the non-automatic aspects of the machines, and lack the resources to hire a person who knows how to do it. Some necessary complements are not readily available, or there is no connection to the internet, or there are not sufficient skilled workers. However, a number of solutions are being developed to many of the problems that medium and small-scale farmers face when trying to implement precision agriculture technologies. Easy to operate economic sensors to measure soil humidity, salinity, and nutrient content. Portable networks to transmit the data collected by field sensors to a central location, as well as economic ways to connect to the internet. Remote sensing through the use of satellite imagery to assess the health status of plants in an economic way, and without requiring that producers know how to operate a device or interpret complex data. The new sharing economy is creating opportunities for farmers to just pay for the services they need, whenever they need them, very similar to the way that Uber operates. And there are many firms competing to provide other services such as drones, data analytics, and forecasting. All of these technological developments are pieces of a puzzle that needs to be put together to make precision agriculture a real option for medium and small-scale producers.
Okay. So as you can see, many of the same questions, and let me jump to the next slide, many of the same questions that we used for the cyber range can be applied to precision agriculture. And in the interest of time, we're not going to go through each of the questions and have Janelle do a fantastic job of talking about the standards. If we did, we would be here a whole lot longer. But some of the questions and standards that we talked about, we're just going to show you real quick, as you can see. Now, these will all be available in our materials through the either the Cyber Club Toolkit or through the landing page. You can see a lot of the same standards kind of apply there. So the next thing we want to do, the second part of this, the first video explains precision agriculture and a lot of the technology behind it. This is actually from a farmer's perspective, and this is some of those possible unintended consequences of technology. So we're going to go ahead and play the short video. And again, this is an edited version. You'll find the link in the materials that's much longer, but again, for sake of time, we just wanted to play a kind of short snip of this. So I'm going to go ahead and start it. Let me know if the audio goes away.
We're gonna hook my laptop up to this combine and try to get codes out of it, I guess. I would say what I'm doing is hacking.
Farms today use a tremendous amount of technology.
DeerBase claims that you only really have the license to use their software. And for someone to say they own the software pretty much takes away the whole viability of the entire tractor or piece of equipment.
The only person that can repair those tractors to a great extent is the dealership.
I mean, look at the size of this machine. If I had to haul this thing 100 miles every time something went wrong with it, it'd cost a fortune. I mean, just to get it on a truck, it costs $1,000, and by the time you get it hauled somewhere and get it hauled back, you're $2,000 into fixing something maybe relatively minor.
When our technology breaks, we replace it. But the art of repair is still practiced by a select few in our tech-obsessed culture. Tractors are the workhorses of agriculture. But unlike the past, the tractor of today is a complex computerized system that relies on embedded software to function. While technology has made tractors more efficient, it has made repair nearly impossible for farmers who need access to the software to repair their equipment. We went to Nebraska to meet the people at the forefront of Right to Repair, a movement fighting large tech companies for access to the diagnostic software needed to fix our things.
The earliest developments were in the engines. And probably from the mid-'80s, we started to see computerized components in engines. to the point where in the mid-90s, essentially the entire engine is run by the computer. And so now today, all functions of the tractor are run by the computer. The repairs have become more challenging. We do not have the ability to hook up a computer to a tractor to diagnose it, to repair it, or even to activate components that we may buy to put on that tractor.
What I do is pretty much mostly is just to repair John Deere equipment, just because I used to work at the John Deere dealership for 23 years and all the customers know me. So they come in and it's been great. If, say, it was actually a computer fault where the computer itself was damaged or whatnot, or it stopped communicating and I had to replace it, I could physically replace the computer, but the computers come basically brain dead. So you have to have the software from John Deere for the serial number tractor. My biggest situation that I can't fix everything, every situation now is, because I don't have, John Deere's service advisor laptop. I can't connect to the equipment. I'm pretty restricted on what I can do as far as the newer equipment.
One of the things I've been told some guys are doing to deal with these issues is there's pirated software out there from Eastern Europe that guys are utilizing to try to get around this, to be able to work on their tractors themselves.
I believe the software I got's a hacked version of John Deere's system when it comes to tractors. I mean, I farm, so out of necessity they break down and I have to repair them in one way or another, and it's a lot cheaper to do it myself than it is to haul it into a repair shop or a dealer to have it fixed. We got lots of, everywhere on a combine there's a sensor here and a sensor there, and every single little part of it has a electrical sensor in it. A couple of years ago we were doing custom anhydrous as fertilizer on cornfields, and you have a real small window to be able to get this done in the year, and the tractor broke down. So I had to find this software to be able to repair my tractor and make my customer happy and make a living.
In 2015, the Library of Congress granted an exemption to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act that makes it legal for farmers to hack their tractors for the purposes of repair. But software modification is still against John Deere's terms of service, which were updated soon after the ruling. Despite this, Right to Repair is a growing movement that's turning ordinary farmers like Guy Mills into activists.
The Fair Repair Act gives an individual the ability, you've always had the right, but the ability to purchase the diagnostic tools and to take it somewhere local or to try to repair the equipment yourself.
Apple and Microsoft showed up at the hearing in Lincoln. Why would Apple care about whether a farmer from Nebraska works on his tractor?
LB 67 got the attention of big tech companies because it affects the repair of all electronics, including smartphones, computers, and of course, tractors.
Again, the way the bill is drafted, it says that any product that is sold and used in the state of Nebraska. If I'm the big guy, what I do is I just don't sell my products in the state of Nebraska because they have to be sold here. If it's online, I don't sell to anybody who has a zip code in Nebraska. And if I'm a little manufacturer, I move out of the state of Nebraska.
So you can see that there is a lot of information in these videos, and there's multiple perspectives. You have the perspective of the company that builds the tractors that wants to protect their investment, but yet you have the perspective of the farmer who needs to be able to have their equipment available to them when they need it. So, and again, this brings up a lot of questions, and we did want to focus on one more question here and around the ethics. So go ahead and in the chat if you'd like, what type of ethical concerns arise through this technology? Mr. Davis says this is the toughie. We need to respect copyright, but access to software needs to be open beyond the dealers at a fair price. I don't want my car to be a brick. I have used hacked software to fix car and other issues. So absolutely. I think that is kind of the big issue for sure. So with that, We are, nice example, grand question. Should all software be open? Is another comment. That's some thoughts. So Janelle is now going to talk about some of the standards we saw here.
Right. And as we look at the standards that address these ethical concerns, you'll see some of the same standards that we used when we were discussing the cyber range. So the technologies may be different, but they address many of the same standards. So for technology, it's the society and technology strand. For ST1A, when you're considering that precision agriculture, the manufacturer and the end user must exhibit ethical, legal, and responsible practices. So your students should consider if the manufacturer or the end user are using ethical practices, and that can make for a very rich debate. For ST1C, all involved should review and demonstrate ethical considerations in creation, the manufacturer, and use, which would be the end user of these digital technologies. For computer science, it connects to the impacts of computing strand. CUCA, we can identify the change that precision agriculture has on the end user's everyday activities to understand the impact, positive and negative, within a society. For CU6B, we can look at the design of the precision agriculture technology for issues of bias and accessibility to address equality and equity. And for SI6A, after learning about precision agriculture from different perspectives, students should be able to analyze and present the beneficial and harmful effects of this technology and understand their impacts. Here are other standards that we felt connected to precision agriculture, technology and computer science standards. You may see other standards that connect as well. I know someone mentioned CTE standards. We could dive into those too that would match both of these issues.
Thanks, John and Janelle. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit. We've been looking at examples of instructional materials and practices. So I'm going to take a moment to think about what we've looked at and think about your own experience you reviewing materials and practices, and think about the criteria that we use to evaluate their quality. So let's just take a moment and think about what types of criteria do you consider when evaluating the quality of instructional practices and materials. And you can post that criteria in the chat, or you can raise your hand and unmute. So let's just take a moment to think about that. What do you think about when you're deciding whether you want to use instructional materials with your students? What kinds of things do you look for? Okay, I see Angela said, does it interest them? Great. Thanks, Angela. Sherry pointed out, are they aligned to the standards? Great point, Sherry. And Jerry talked about looking for authentic experiences. Yes, and can they access it? And is it interesting? And Angela said, will it be on the test? Okay, we can think about that, about alignment, assessment alignment to goals, objectives, and targeted content. Is it user-friendly? A lot of good things are coming up here. So, and Sherry offered another one. Do they bring in different perspectives? Great. These are all really great points and suggestions and things to think about. We are also, so now we're going to post in the chat a rubric or filter with criteria that we considered for this project, and it's based on filters we developed for other purposes. And you'll see when you look at this document, this rubric, that you'll see criteria that were actually mentioned in the chat. So we considered standard alignment. We looked at conceptual understanding, how the materials, the practices promote deep understanding of content and concepts. The contextual learning, for example, the way we used real world experiences in our examples. Accessibility, freedom from bias, and there's more that are listed in the filter or rubric that we've posted into the chat, or that John is going to be posting into the chat in just a moment.
I'll post it here in just a moment.
Okay, and when it's posted, you'll see that it is a Word doc, because this is one resource you can use to evaluate your materials, and we put it in Word so that you can customize it to include your own criteria. And we really view this as an ongoing process where you will revisit your rubrics that you use, the criteria that you use, as you use them with new materials to evaluate new materials. And there's another resource also that we're going to provide for you that you can use to evaluate. And it is the rubric that's available in the Remote edX Exchange. And it's a rubric for evaluating instructional materials. So we also are going to be sharing this resource, and you'll have everything by the end of the session, which is now coming up shortly. So with that, we are going to wrap up our session. We've come to the end, and we wanted to thank you so much for attending and taking time away from your busy schedules to join us. As I said, the session slides, recordings, resources are going to be available on the department's Building Bridges webpage, which we will be posting that in the link. And also it will be, and please allow 1 to 2 weeks for that. And also it will be available in that Info Ohio Spaces, Open Spaces website that John provide the link for. We also are going to be posting a PDF that will have all of the links to all of the materials available, and John's going to be putting that into the chat. And also, please take a moment to fill out the brief exit survey or exit ticket that we are going to provide the link to in the chat. And you'll also use this exit ticket to provide your information to earn contact hours. And we are going to be pasting that into the chat. And John, also, if you could paste into the chat the instructional materials for computer science and technology rubric, that Word doc, that would be great. And so our contact information is listed on the slide, but we will remain afterwards if you have any questions. And we just wanted to thank you again and wishing you a wonderful start to your school year. And we also will give you a moment to copy all the resources and links you want from the chat. But again, these will all be available on the department's Building Bridges webpage in a week or so, and available in that Info Ohio Open Spaces link. So thank you all.